Hey, welcome to another
Hi.
episode. Well, what? What? Hi, what? Another
Welcome
episode?
to another episode. Let's say it at the same time.
Welcome.
No, I just went off Welcome to Off the Fence.
Where we spend time dwelling on getting off the fence.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know what you were going to say.
Hey, how you doing?
I function like a squirrel most days. I am certain I have ADHD. A doctor's actually told me he thinks I have it. And today is a hard day for that because our dog keeps getting up. We have a puppy, which is like having a baby, and I'm not sleeping well. So I'm just feeling really scattered today. So thank you for asking. How are you doing?
Delightful.
Really? Like Sara Lee bread.
Yeah, I missed my motorcycle, and so this kind of brings me back to memories of my motorcycle.
You miss it in the winter?
I miss it always
Why'd you sell it?
because it was time to sell it.
Okay. I love you.
Hey, here's what we're going to talk about. Speaking of when do you let things go,
Oh, segue.
let's talk about faithfulness.
Yes.
I think one of the things that we wrestle with is staying involved in the work that we're called to and that we've chosen to be a part of. So I want to start us off with a parable, a story that Jesus told.
Okay? A parable.
A parable.
That's what Bo calls them.
And this will be familiar if you've read the Bible. This is one of those parables it's retold frequently. I'm going to not read the whole thing, but take us through this. Matthew 25:14. Just listen, but Matthew 25:14. Again, the kingdom of heaven, this is Jesus talking, can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip.
Mm-hmm.
He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, big deal. This is a story Jesus is saying that, if just to read between the lines, that God has given us something, or things, time, talent, treasure, all that kind of stuff, and he's handed it over. It's his. It's always his. And he's handed it over to us to use it, to steward it.
Yes.
Which is one of those classic first experiences. Like when you just think about, okay. So God has entrusted me, and you might be right now frustrated with what God's entrusted you with. You don't like it or blah, 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 blah. But just the fact that you're alive and that you have, whether it's a little bit or a lot of time, that you have a talent or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, you have treasure, whether it's like Bo, where he might have a 50 cents to his name, or maybe you're someone listening, you have $50 million net worth. I don't know. But we all have different versions of this. But just the fact that you and I are still breathing and operating and doing stuff tells us that should be enough proof that the Almighty God still finds us useful, still finds us able to accomplish something that the Lord would like us to do.
Amen.
So, starts off, storyline. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. Verse 16, verse 16, the servant who received the 5 bags of silver, began to invest the money and earned 5 more. Feels like a story problem that I'm reading. Takes me back to math.
I love story problems.
So he gets 5 more after the 5 he was given. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. So you've got 3 servants. 1 got 5 bags of silver. 1 got 2 bags of silver. 1 got 1 bag of silver. So the 1 bag of silver guy seems to be motivated by fear. Seems to be like, he doesn't do anything with it. He literally in the story, he digs a hole, puts it in there.
So at least it's safe.
So it's safe. But I do think there's an illustration there that many of us right now who might be feeling like, we don't have very much. A lot of times the rich are given a hard time about, they just hold on to their money and all their abilities and all that kind of stuff. In this instance, it's the guy who didn't have a lot that buried it and was afraid to lose it. Perhaps the poverty mentality, like this is all I got. So Jesus begins to unfold the story, and it gets intense because it's not just like, so this person had this much and here's what they did with it. Matthew 25:26. But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant," to the guy who buried it. "If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." And then Jesus, when you think the dial is turned all the way up, he turns it up even more. Verse 28, then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant." He's given 1 bag of silver, and now it's being taken from him. "And give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given." That is so crucial. I'm reading it. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
How sad is that?
That's like,
That's
whoa,
intense.
Jesus.
Yeah.
God, whoa. But he's illustrating a deeper thing than just a bag of silver.
For sure.
To understand what he's illustrating, it's not just a story about one servant who dug a hole and put money there because of fear or concern. Verse 21 actually begins to tell like all the story. The master was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant," to the guy who invested 5 bags of silver. He's like, "Good job, you. You have been faithful. You have been faithful." Read it again. "You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." This guy's got 5, he's got 10 now. It's awesome. And then he gets another one. So, I mean, dude's doing well. But what's interesting is what is also said to the other servant who was given too. The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." He's saying the exact same things. "You have been faithful in handling this small amount." Exact same thing. You find it fascinating. I'm just thinking about this. Jesus is calling the 5 bags of silver small. He's also calling the 2 bags of silver small. Calls the 1 bag of silver small. We measure, comparatively speaking, to another person. He's like, it's all small because God's filthy rich. "You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so I will give you more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." What grips me in that is the master, in this case, God's response to each of the 3 servants had nothing to do with, well, I know I gave you more money, so that kind of changed things.
Yeah.
No, the whole conversation was the same with each servant. You and I have a tendency to measure how much fruit we have. Where the lesson I want to share is God is measuring us and looking at us at the faithfulness that we bring. And oftentimes we stop being faithful because we started counting the fruit or started looking at other people's vineyards or orchards, all that. We look at their stuff, and it's been a profound lesson that he's given us things, lots of different things. But so faithfulness, I want to talk about faithfulness. I want you and I to just process this and talk about this. And one thing I've always utilized when we talk about faithfulness, because it's a big word, like, okay, I'm going to be faithful. But sometimes faithfulness feels like, well, I haven't left. I'm still there. I'm still showing up. But what does faithfulness look like if it was a machine and you were to take it apart and say, what's going on inside of the machine of faithfulness? The word I would use, and this is not all-inclusive describing all of faithfulness, is the word grit. And what's often lacking, what often causes us to give up, to quit, is grit. By definition, sure, dictionaries might say different stuff, but grit is the character to commit and complete.
It's a two-parter.
Yep. And I think a lot of us, obviously, and it's in phases, will commit to something or someone, but we don't see it out. And that's the see it out, that's the faithfulness part. Faithfulness is not deciding to commit. It's deciding and actually fulfilling. It's completing. And so grit. If you think of it in like, again, that's if we were to continue to tear apart the machine and look at like what does grit even look like? Faithfulness, part of faithfulness is having grit. Grit is a character, commit, and complete. So what does grit actually mean I need to pay attention to? And I've shared this at funerals. I've shared this with our kids, is pay attention to what you're holding on to. If right now you're processing, and if right now you're considering being unfaithful to something you've committed to, your workplace, you're like, you know what? I used to, but now I don't want to. And you're gonna be, maybe it's a marriage where you're actually facing the temptation of unfaithfulness. Going back on the covenant you made on that wedding day, no matter what goes on, I am all yours. I think we all face it. Maybe it's a team. Maybe right now you're playing on a team and you're like, I don't like my team, or I don't like that person. I'm gonna quit. Pay attention to what you're holding on to. I think in life, what we hold on to and how we hold on to things becomes so significant and challenging. So I'll give you an example. When I'm thinking about parenting, when I'm thinking about like the people I really love and I'm really around and I'm highly involved in, that God has really said, I want you, okay, these are your kids, this is your family, all that kind of stuff, and what we're holding on to, it ends up being something that I'm processing. How tightly am I holding on to it? And we've said this multiple times on the podcast, where I'll get distracted and I won't hold on tightly to my role as dad or as husband or as pastor. I'll get distracted. And so right now, some of us aren't like gripped on. We're like too loosely hanging on to people that matter so much. And I brought up a funeral. So when you go to a funeral, you're reminded of how important people are.
How short life is.
And you begin to realize, I was not leveraging, I wasn't holding on to my role as dad, or in this case, whoever's listening, your mom, you're a boss, you're a teammate, you're a kid, whatever.
A friend, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's worth us right now, and I'm bringing it up. Are you being tempted to be unfaithful to someone? And it's simply because you have neglected how important that person is. And you just haven't been holding on to them. Maybe out of desperation, you wish someone would hold on to you in a sense. They would reach out to you and all that. But I think we need this fresh reminder that we are called to be faithful, that God values faithfulness. And one of the things that we do is to value other people.
Yeah. I think too, though, even things we've committed to for ourselves, like if you're trying to be healthier, or if you're trying to commit to have time in the Word and time in prayer, choosing things that don't align with that, or choosing things that distract you from that, is also, you're being unfaithful to commitments that you've made, even to yourself. And I think that happens a lot too. I think that those are some of the things I think of when I'm like, ooh, yeah, I really wanted to stop and get cookies yesterday and I didn't. And I was so proud of myself because I was faithful to a commitment I made just to me. Yeah. And I think that I'm still really proud of myself, but now I also want a cookie again. But
well, we let go. I don't know if it's even on purpose. It's not like we intentionally let go. We just accidentally let go. We loosen our grip just a little too much, and it's like, oh no, why is this falling apart? And a lot of times it's because you stopped being faithful, because you stopped holding on.
Yep. And sometimes that happens in one action, can derail everything. Other times it's gradual over time. It's just apathy or laziness or repetitive choices that lead us to that. But definitely loosely gripping. What about over gripping?
but before we move on to that, like I think about the talking with our oldest, who's in college, and what I'm seeing, I remember this myself. But when you leave the home, you begin to define what's important, what's not important, what's important to what Hayden's doing right now, processing and labeling. What's important to him, what's not, what's crucial, what's valuable, and one of the lessons he's learning is, what do I do when I encounter something really difficult?
Yes.
So our son has what's called a speech block. Is there a better word
No,
for that?
that's what it is. Yeah.
What that means is, and he's given us free permission to talk about this. We've talked about this regularly. Where when he speaks, sometimes the words just don't flow out initially right off the bat.
It's kind of like an extensive stutter for people that don't know what that is. Yeah.
So imagine taking a difficulty with speech into a class he's taking this semester called speech, where it is literally
talking in front of people,
putting together moments of 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, speeches, talk about. It's one thing, it's difficult to talk in front of your peers.
Yeah, no matter what. Right.
So they even say public speaking is one of the biggest fears that any human being ever faces. Now add to that a physical difficulty of actually getting the words out. So we were talking, and one of the questions he was asking was, should I take this class? And it was profound to me because as his dad, I want to say, yeah, no. Like, and it's like, no. Fine.
Right.
Talk to your advisor. Let's find another option for you. But then I was thinking, so what's the worst case scenario here? Worst case scenario could be a mixture of different things where he takes speech class, he does horrible, he fails the class, and people in the class make fun of him, right? That might be the extremes. Would you agree?
I think so.
Okay. So when he's processing, what are they going to say? What are they going to do? And how's this going to play out?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, that's not that bad. He could recover from that. That's not life or death.
Yeah.
So we talked through. I was like, dude, sometimes being faithful to because he feels like God has him there is just doing difficult stuff. And so I think it's worth bringing up, like when you're holding on to stuff, do you let go as soon as difficult shows up? Soon as you're tempted to eat the cookie, soon as you're blah, 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 like, do you just let go?
Gossip. I'm thinking of all of these things too, because like somebody starts talking bad about somebody and you just jump in, or do you withhold? There's so many different day-to-day things though that and sometimes we just get fatigued and tired because we say this a lot, but it's not always the gigantic Super Bowl distractions. It's the day-to-day, like one small thing at a time. And just even taking a minute to think through what are some of those things in my life that I maybe even repetitively have to say no to. And sometimes you're just like, all right, I'll have a cookie. And start paying attention to those in your life, even just to reinstate your commitment to them.
Well, you're bringing up Matthew 25:21. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. One of the keys to faithfulness and grit is not the big goal that you set. It's the small moments that you have decided out of faithfulness and holding on to what God has asked you to do.
Yes.
The small little moments. Will you hold on then?
Yes.
And that's a big deal.
Yes.
So now let's confuse everybody.
I think I do that naturally.
Because grit and faithfulness is not a science.
Right.
So the same illustration is everyone wants to do this with me right now. Make a fist like you're holding on to something so dear, so maybe it is the cookie, but don't squeeze, don't crumble the cookie.
Not
right? But like if you make a fist and make like a distinctive, like squeeze your fist hard, like hold on.
I'm so glad my nails are not long.
As though you're like literally like on a roller coaster, afraid for your life, and you're holding on to the bar in front of you, whatever. And then hold on, squeeze tight, squeeze tight, squeeze tight, and then all of a sudden let go. And how good that feels in that moment of just kind of letting go. That's a good example, I think, that faithfulness isn't just grit and holding on tightly. Sometimes faithfulness is letting go.
Letting go. Yeah.
Is releasing a little bit, is deciding to say, my faithfulness to God is letting our oldest son make choices on his own, letting go, not making sure I don't make every decision for him, even when he's asking us, what do I do?
What should I do? Yeah.
And we say back, what do you think you should do? Yeah. That's a part of faithfulness is not building a life and then holding on to that life. Is not having children in your home and then holding on to all of the control of those kids. It's not committing to another person in marriage and then just like holding on and thinking, I've got to do everything and I've got no, there's the unscientific part of this is like literally being, even though you care so much, letting other people get involved. And I think it's difficult. So some of us right now, if you're paying attention still, you want to be faithful? Well, it might be time that you let your kids have a little bit more room to make some decisions. If you're a boss, let your teammates, your staff have a little bit more, let go a little bit, loosen up a little bit. And that allows you to be faithful to the bigger calling God has you at, the bigger mission that he's got you in. Hebrews 12:6, and it is impossible to please God without faith. So think about, if you want to please God, you have to have some faith, which means in order to please God, you can't hold on to everything you want to hold on to in life. You have to be willing to let things go a little bit. I don't know if that helps people, but faithfulness, grit, grip. Hopefully we opened up that engine enough to understand how to get about being a faithful person.
Yes.
Don't let difficult lead you away.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Until next time.
We love you.
Bye.